If this is your first time ever building a PC, then you're in the right place because this is my first time installing an AIO into a PC build. Now, I've done a Ryzen build with an air cooler in the past, and if you're curious about that video, it'll be linked in the YouTube cards above. But this is gonna be a step-by-step guide of me, for the first time, doing an AIO build. I'm gonna do the motherboard installation. I'm gonna make sure that the RAM and the SSD are installed on the motherboard before we put it into the case. And so there's a few step-by-step things that we're gonna do, and you're gonna follow along with me. And being that I'm not a super pro, I'm gonna explain all the things I'm doing because then that will help you with the common mistakes that beginners make.
Let's get rocking.
First thing that we want to do is set up the motherboard though. So I'm going to take the case off of the table. I'm going to get the motherboard out of the case. Then I'm going to install the SSD. I'm going to install the RAM. I'm going to install the CPU, and I'm going to put this plate on our motherboard before putting it in the case. All right, so there's a handful of helpful tools. I've built out a couple videos, and like I've said, this is a part of a larger build series where I talk about how to pick your parts, different tools that you can use. This is a toolkit from iFixit. It'll be linked in the description below, and all of these parts will be linked in the description below as well. Now, I'd like to thank ASUS, I'd like to thank NZXT, Corsair, and Kingston for all sponsoring this build. They've provided the parts and made this build possible, as well as Intel with this i9 processor. Also, if you're curious about benchmarks, so Ryzen 3900X versus this i9 processor, you can also check out that video, and that will be linked up in the YouTube cards above. So you can see, do I want to do an Intel build or do I want to do a Ryzen build? That will be the info that you'll be able to find here on this channel. All right, I'm gonna make a little noise for a second here and get this unpacked. All right, so the first thing that you want to do is pull your motherboard out of the box and set it down on top of your motherboard box. This is a safe way to do it. Make sure you're grounded. You always want to touch something metal, so whether it be your case, when you're getting the build going. You could even pull your power supply out and touch your power supply, and that'll de-static you. I'm wearing rubber slippers, so I'm good there. I'm not standing on carpet. That's often been I want to say kind of a myth where people are like, don't stand on carpet. Jay's 2 Cents did a whole video about that, about how it really didn't matter. But I'd still be cautious because, you know, Jay's got tons and tons of PCs to play around with, and we don't. We have one, and it's very special to us. So the first thing we need to do is remove this and pull that out of there. So literally all you do is pull that up, and then this plate comes out, no big deal. And we can drop that. We can even throw that away, keep it as a souvenir, put it on our shelf, whatever you need to do. Now, the next thing that you want to do is grab your CPU from your box. I like the packaging that they did. It's actually very cool. I was surprised when I got this one in the mail. I thought it was just going to be some very basic packaging. I've seen Intel do that in the past, but it came in really cool retail packaging. Definitely competing with Ryzen for that. And this is the i9 10900K. So we'll grab this guy out of here. Okay, now when you go to install this, you'll see an arrow in the corner. You can see that there's an arrow in the corner. And what you want to do is you want to line that arrow up with the dot on your motherboard. So if you look here, there's a dot right there in the corner of your motherboard, and that'll make sure that everything lines up correctly. So you see we're vertical here, we're vertical here. That dot will line up, that arrow will line up with that dot. So we just want to bring it over and just drop it in there. Ever so slightly drop it in. And you should not force it in. It should fall right into place. And then from there, you go ahead and you pull this down, which will then slide under there and just push it into place. And you've installed your CPU. Super simple. Just drop it in. Don't force it in. You don't want to bend any of those pins. All right, next thing we're going to do is install our RAM. Now I have Dominator Platinum RGB. These are from Corsair. So we're going to put these in there. And it doesn't matter which one goes in which slot, but the slots do matter. So you want to make sure that you check your manual. And for my manual, I'm putting it in B2 and A2. So you want to make sure you're putting it in the correct slots. And also you want to make sure that when you put it in, you pull off all the little stickers and things. Because if it does get warm, you'd hate to have some plastic melt happen anywhere in there. And then when you put the slots in, so as you see here, you want to make sure you line up these two. You want to make sure you line up these two. So if I try to do it like that, obviously you see it won't line up, it won't go in. But when I do it like that, then drop it in there and just a little bit of force, and that pops it right into place. That one's good. All right, next one we're gonna do is same thing, except we wanna make sure we install it in the A2 slot. And like I said, you'll be able to check this out on your manual, and then you'll make sure that you're in the right places. So again, I'm gonna pull this plastic off. One, here, number 2. And then again, we wanna make sure that we're lining these up correctly. See, that's incorrect. Flip it around, and that would be correct. I'm gonna drop that into place. 1, 2. Give a little pressure on each side, and that drops that into place perfectly. All right, next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and install the SSD, so our solid state drive. I have a 1 terabyte solid state drive from Kingston. It's the KC2500. These are pretty quick drives. There's different options, obviously, from Kingston. They sponsored the build, and so they sent this over for us to put in here. So we're going to go ahead and pull these out. This is the M.2 shield that actually provides a little bit of extra cooling. So if you look underneath here, try not to spill these screws out. There's that sticker there. Screws, okay. So you got to pull this sticker off ever so carefully, because you don't want to pull all that gunk off with you. Actually, I already pulled a little gunk off on accident. So you grab that, and that's a somewhat of a cooling compound. So when you put this on, you want to make sure you place it in correctly, and then you just set that down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our M.2, slide it into place. It'll click in very gently. And now as you see there, it's not going to go down. Like it won't connect. See, so we need to take these standoffs, which were provided with our motherboard. And we actually have 2 of them, because we have a slot here and a slot here, but we're only going to use 1 of them. Okay, so I'm going to put my screws. These are super handy, by the way. Love these. They're little magnetic trays. Can't go wrong with those. So I'm going to pull this back out, because I wanted to check out where it would line up. So I'll slide that out ever so gently, set that down on the non-static pad. Oh, I always do that. I always forget where it is. There it is. And then I'll just do some finger tension here and put this into place. So you can see there, that's going right into place. Boop, that's good. It actually comes with, mine comes with a little toolkit, so you can just like fully secure that. Which one is? I think it's this one. There we go. So like tighten it down. But honestly, once you put it in and secure it, you really don't need any of that. But if you want to be extra safe, you can always do a actual bit to tighten that down. All right, so now we'll take our screwdriver and we'll push this into place here. There we go. And we'll just drop that right into place there. And we just want a good finger tension. We don't want to over tighten it. Just nice, just doop, little twist without getting our fingers stuck to the pad. So now I'm gonna drop that down in there. Make sure that screw lines up, which it does perfectly. And then drop this one right into here to the other side. Drop that over a little bit right there. There we go. Fasten those down, and we're good to go. Nice little finger tension on these 2. Nothing too tight. That looks good. All right, now that we have the SSD, we have the CPU and the RAM installed, we want to install the AIO, which is our cooling system, and then the GPU, and then we're going to grab a screen, and we're going to actually boot this computer. We'll get the power supply all hooked up, and we want to do a boot outside of the case, because if there's anything that's wrong, we don't want to have already installed everything into the case and then pull it all back out and do it again. So we're going to get everything hooked onto here, we're going to boot it, see if it works, and then go from there. So let's get moving and working on that. The first thing we want to do is grab this back plate. So this back plate is actually going to fasten on the back side of the motherboard. I'll show you right here like this. So you can see that this will fit through. We want to make sure all these are lined up. Okay, so these are all going to actually go to the center. You see right there. Boom, boom, boom. And then that should drop right into place like so. Those, and there, okay, perfect. We'll push that into place. Okay, that looks good. Then we'll lay this back down. All right, so now that we are ready to we have the back plate on, now we're gonna put the standoffs in. Now there's 2 different sets of standoffs. And the set I'm going to use are going to be the ones with the 2 long ends, because this fits into there, and then these fit into the I don't know, we'll just call it the female, male, female. There we go. And then we'll go. All right, so now those are installed. Now what we want to do is I want to take a little bit of thermal paste. We want to do a pea-size dot onto the CPU, just like that. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. This is the way that I have found most effective, and if you do a little research online, you'll find is the highest recommended, because it delineates the paste across the CPU in the most even fashion. All right. Want to make sure we're lining it up to where our ports are all accessible, or accessible, however you want to say it. So thinking I want to do it like this. That's how I'm going to do it. Okay. So we're going to line up all 4 of those. Then we're going to drop that right onto there. I'm going to hold that down so it doesn't move around. So the one thing that's nice about AIOs versus air coolers is they set into place very snug, rather than that really heavy air cooler kind of just being cumbersome. So that's the benefit of AIOs, is they're more secure and they don't hang up a bunch of weight off of it. But at the same time, we don't want to over tighten one side. We want to put them all in, and then we want to snug them all down after they've all been installed, because we don't want it to set unevenly on top of the CPU. I'll most likely install this the other way, because I want these pipes leading down into the front of the case. But just so this was kind of out of my way as I'm like testing, that's why I did it there, because the GPU is going to be here. So I want a little more room as I'm running a lot of the testing, and this just allowed it to kind of be out of the way. But when we install, I'll most likely have the pipes or the tubes running out this way or out the bottom. That way it routes directly over to where I'm going to install it. I know it's not a huge detail, but I think that's neat. They just put ASUS right there. I just think that looks really cool.
Hold on. Turn the type tilt.
All right, so now we're going to drop this into the PCIe slot here. We're making sure that we have some hang off so that this doesn't catch when we go to push it in. So we're going to go and line up these pins right into there. See that right there? Bam, done. Okay, now it's time to hook up the power supply so we can have power to the components. So our power supply is complements of Corsair. We have the RM750X. It's the power supply we're going to be using. Recommend getting at least a bronze, but I recommend getting at least a silver, but gold is definitely the way to go. It's just the quality of the component. And your power supply is very important, because if your power supply shorts out or malfunctions, it has the potential to fry some of your parts. So you want a good quality power supply. You don't want to cheap out. You don't have to get a couple $100 power supply by any stretch of the imagination, but having a nice power supply is important. So we got some extra screws and stuff, which we don't need quite yet. I love this little baggie they sent. So this is where all of our cords are. You can see right in there. I think that's nice and organized. All right, now we're going to take our power supply cables and we're going to hook them into the power supply and then into the components. So right here, you'll see it'll say either it'll say either GPU, or it'll say PCIe, or it'll say video. But this one is saying PCIe, which is the most accurate description, which I appreciate. So I'm going to go ahead and take the one that leads to the power supply, put it in the PCIe slot, which is right here. Okay, and then this one leads up to our power supply. Not our power supply, excuse me, our GPU. All right, there we go. And that goes into there. Okay, looks good. All right, so this one goes into the power supply. So you put the 8-pin there, and then you put the other one in there. Okay, that one's secured. And then we come over here, let me show you on the motherboard. there's that massive 24 pin that we're going to be going into. So go line that up and push that into place. Okay. Now the next one we are going to do is the CPU. To the CPU. There we go. And then we have our 8 pin that goes right in there. Some have an extra, but we do not. This motherboard does not have that. So we are getting there. We're moving forward. Now the next thing we need to do is hook up the power to our heatsink, which we have the cords for right here. All right, now in order to hook in our SATA power, we need to hook in a SATA into our power supply. So we have one right here. Looks like that. This is what we have. So this will plug into here, like so. Oop, upside down. There we go. And then this hooks into our power supply. So right here you see SATA, peripheral, and SATA. So that's where we're going to hook in right there. Bottom one. Okay. This, we have to find a fan. So we have to find a pump, so an AIO pump. And if I look correctly, you see, I don't know if you're going to be able to see these words, but down in there, it says AIO pump. It's pretty dark down in there. So I'm not sure if you can see that. So right here, that's our AIO pump. That's what we need to be plugging into right there. So we take our 3 prong, and it'll drop right down in there. Just like so. Perfect. So if you come over here and look, there's a USB. Yeah, it's a USB. Yep, there's a USB that hooks in right here. Make sure we hook that in the correct. Okay, we gotta flip it over. So that hooks into there. And then we just have to simply locate a USB 2.0 connector, which is right here. There. Goes to there. There. Drop that bad boy in there. And we're good. So our power supply has been hooked up to all of our components. Now, I need to take a second, grab a screen so we can see if we can get a post. So we need a post because we want to make sure that our computer can boot into the BIOS. So if it boots into the BIOS, that means that all the parts are installed and they're working and they're operating, and we can move forward to putting this into the case and making all this wiring look so much better, because it looks pretty atrocious at the moment. But we're just making sure to test our PC parts so that way once we install it, we don't have to uninstall everything if there is an error. So jump back to you in just a second. Okay, so now we have our screen. This is actually the Concept D CM2 by Acer. This is a 100% sRGB and 100% Adobe RGB, as well as 96% DCI-P3. So this is a really color accurate monitor. It's a really good budget, actually. So I wanted to kind of introduce this to you guys here, and I'll link that in the description below. So if you're looking for a great color accurate monitor, this is a solid buy. Okay, so that's what we're using to test to see if we can get a post. So I'm gonna take my HDMI cord, which is plugged into the back of my monitor. I'm gonna remove one of my little protectors out of the GPU, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my HDMI for my screen into my GPU. Now, let's see, I haven't actually looked. Do we have an on-off button on this motherboard? It does not look like we do. So we're gonna have to jumpstart it. Now, what that basically means is we're going to cross the negative and positive, which then turns on our motherboard. Don't get too overwhelmed. I'm actually gonna show you how to do that right now. So what you wanna do is you wanna come down here and find where your power button modulars are, and you wanna cross the two. So you wanna take a metal screwdriver of some sorts, and you wanna just fish around here. Oh, haha. Always make sure you turn your power supply on. So if you come on back here, you can see the obvious on-off button will be a clear indication on powering up your supply. Now, one thing you're gonna see is if your motherboard has RGB lighting, you're gonna see RGB lighting, which means that your power supply is getting power. Your motherboard is getting power. So that is a really good thing. That means our pins are installed correctly. But now is the moment of truth. We got to jump start our power supply. So you come on over here to where it says power switch and power reset. And we want to cross these two. All right, we did it. So it's right there. So you just cross those two and that'll turn it on. Now, let's see, fingers crossed. So it's right here. That's where it is. It's already on, so it's not popping anymore. Fingers crossed, let's see if we get a post. And that will be right here. So We did not get a post. All right, let's try again. Here it goes again. It's going to turn off and turn on. Sometimes it does that. Sometimes it does a dual cycle. It turned off again. All right, let's see what happens. Firing up. Hey, we got a post though. So we got a post, which is a very, very good sign. Now, sometimes it'll do that, which made me super nervous. It went through multiple cycles till it finally gave us a post. Other motherboards and CPU combinations will immediately give you a post and it'll jump right into the BIOS, but other ones will do like 2 or 3 cycles and then it'll kick in. So don't be nervous if you don't get a post on the first initial click. It will come around and you'll end up having this. So this is good. We are in business and we can now move on to setting up the motherboard and all the components inside of the case. So let's do that. Okay, so I thought about just like taking all of this apart and then like pulling the case up here and just showing you like, okay, now let's put it in. But this is a complete beginner's guide. So I want to walk through step by step. So we're going to pull out the HDMI port like so. I'm going to remove the screen from off of the desk to give us a little bit more working space. Unplug the screen. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull all of the power cables out of each of the ports. So this is the GPU, that comes out. The motherboard and CPU ports are going to come out. So you just got to kind of do a little, you squeeze those toggles and just do a little wiggle and those pop right out. Okay, that looks good. Okay, almost all clear of these. So now we're going to pull this one out of the side of the heatsink, and we're going to pull the fan out. So that was connected to our SATA or SATA, however you want to correct me. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and unplug the USB from the side, which is plugged into the USB 2.0. I'm going to put all these cords together so we don't lose them over there. And now I will pull the GPU off. This just makes it easier to navigate. Having your GPU connected gets a little bit cumbersome. So having that one pulled off is always a good idea. And now we're going to take the heat sink off of the motherboard. Grab my screwdriver. And I'm going to do an even removal of this. So that way the heat sink rises evenly as to not bend or throw anything off. Okay, now we want to lift straight up off of the motherboard as to not mess too much with our thermal paste. Now what you want to do with this is you can get a paper towel and either, honestly the best is like isopropyl alcohol. So you want to get a little paper towel and some isopropyl alcohol and you just want to clean it up and then we'll reapply the thermal paste once we put this into the case. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick and I'll show you guys how to do that as well. So apparently it's isopropyl. So I stand corrected. My wife's a nurse and very, very solid science major in college. So I said what did I say, isopropyl? So we're going to go ahead and get all this gunk off. So cotton swabs, I usually will finish with paper towels, especially on the motherboard, because the cotton swabs tend to want to like flake off a little bit, but here on the heatsink, there's not a lot for the cotton swab to grab onto. So I'll do that like this here. So I'm going to start off with a cotton swab, but then I'll do the finishing touches with a probably a little paper towel and napkin. You don't want to get it too wet, obviously. Although alcohol is a drying agent. Can I say that? A drying agent. It still causes some moisture when it initially touches. So we want to avoid too much moisture. All right, so we got that. Now I'll grab our paper towels and do some fine tuning. I know this was an extra process and a lot of people avoid doing the pre-install because of this, because you got to clean it, because you got to, basically do a double install. But if you have any issues, which we didn't, hallelujah, you can easily address them. But we didn't, so that's a huge bonus. So yeah, it might feel like you might have wasted some time doing a pre-install, But in the long run, you're not going to be madder than a one-legged sailor when you put it in the case and something doesn't work. So we're good. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and move all this off of the table because we're going to bring the case up here. And we are going to start our install process. Okay, ready, rolling. All right, so there's a little screw on this side for the NZXT case. Some cases are different, but for the NZXT, honestly, it's just this one screw. You just pop that out, and then you pull it up, and it just kind of pulls out like that. Okay, I already took the back panel off earlier and set it over here, so I put those two together. So we are good to go with that. We have all of our standoff screws here. And so we want these. These are very important. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull out these screws and I'm going to put them inside of my dish so I can keep track of them. So we can find them. Those are not it. Okay, I think we're finding them right here. They should be labeled. Okay, so you see each of these are labeled. Now this is very important because we need to install the radiator into this case. And so we need to make sure we're using the right screws for the standoffs versus the right screws for the radiator. So you got to jump into your manual and we're going to find out which screws we're supposed to use. It's a treasure map. Let's see what we got here.
Completely white. There's nothing.
There's nothing on it. It's invisible. You ever seen National Treasure? It's invisible. There's nothing there, right? It's a mystery. You just gotta and a little lime and you're good and you'll see everything. I'm kidding. You can probably see it without the lights. Okay. So right here is the accessory box. And so it looks like our standoff screws. This is not helpful so far. Where's the darn standoff installation? There it is. B. So the treasure map has revealed which screws we need to use, and it is B. Bam. Okay, so I poured those in there so we can find those. Put these underneath here so I don't forget which ones I'm using. Always want to make sure you stay organized because as soon as you get unorganized, you mess something up. Okay, we have our motherboard. We need to now put it into the case, and it's very simple. If you look in here, I'm going to bring a light over to help us out. So all these standoffs are pre-installed. I love that because the last time the standoffs were not pre-installed, I put them in the wrong place and burnt up a motherboard. Honesty Street, just being real. We're not going to do that today. Okay, so we want to pull this off of our box. Okay, so before we put the motherboard into the case, we have to put the ports shield into the case. So we bring it down here. A little bit of finagling, and a little bit of pressure, and it should pop right into place. All right, everything looks good there. Make sure that's pushed in nice and secure. And now we can put it in. So what I'll do is I'll grab it a little bit probably by here and here because that'll allow me to navigate it into the case and into that AIO shield. And then if you look as I put this into the case, I want to slide it up under the fan. And I need to locate our standoffs. See, it looks like our ports are fitting in nicely. There we go. There we go. And then as you see here in the center, so this is our goal. See in the center there, see there's that metal piece sticking through? Let me pull it up a little bit. So see, I pull it up and it goes away and I push it down and it goes in. That's our main mounting indicator, basically, is kind of how I consider it. And so if that's in place, that means our motherboard and our ports are all aligned correctly, and we can go ahead and secure it to the motherboard, okay? Secure it to the case, excuse me. So it looks like everything is in its proper place, and now we can start installing the screws to hold the motherboard in place. So there's one there back in the dark corner. Start with that one. And we'll just work our way around the case here as you locate screws. This one's way back here. You won't be able to see this one, so just stay over there. No need to come over here. Don't worry about what we're doing on this end. Nothing to see here. Another one put in. And there's a couple on this top ridge here. and then I'll just slowly put the rest in. And by slowly, I mean slowly. And when you're installing these, again, it's just finger tension. We're not trying to crank these down. You got enough screws in this motherboard to hold it all in place. So you're not, over tightening. And you definitely don't want to strip them, so you just want to make sure you get it right. And then just secure it into place. A couple more here. Go. And don't be stressed. I was stressed earlier. Don't be stressed. This is so fun. In my opinion, I love building these. It's super fun. If you notice, my channel in general is focused more on laptops, and that's something I can do, and I give my recommendations on and review laptops, and that's super cool. And I love doing that. But this is just a whole nother level of fun for me. So thank you for watching this. I hope you're enjoying this build. It's just a good time. All right, so now we want to mount the radiator and the fans for the AIO. So we have unscrewed these to loosen them up here. This is where we're gonna secure the radiator. We just need to do a little pull to get this out. There we go. So you gotta kind of push it that way and then pull it. So, because there's these little notches that you need to come away from this, that hooks in there. Okay, all those great adverbs, adjectives, things. So that's how we want it. All right, now that we pulled the bracket out, we're going to go ahead and set both fans on top of the cooler with the hose facing down. So the hose is facing down and both fans are getting set on top of the cooler. All right, so now we're gonna lay this down right on top and we'll secure the screws on and then we'll place it right into the case. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm not gonna tighten the screws down too much at first. I want a little bit of give in case I have to slide it around a bit to make sure it is in the right place and all the screws can secure down to the radiator. And it's nice because these screws hold the plate to the fans to the radiator. One screw. So it's a really nice little system they got going on here. Now I'm going to tighten these all down. Nothing too crazy and too tight, just good finger tension. Not trying to hulk these screws into place or anything like that. But you don't want them loose because then you'll get these metal washers vibrating, and that's never a pleasant sound. All right, now we're going to drop it right in to place. That looks good. I'm going to come around the back here, but you just basically pop these right into the bracket, and then we'll secure it in with this screw right here. And there we go. The radiator is in. Now what we want to do is hook in some of the ports before I put this and the GPU in place. That way we have a little bit of room to navigate. So what we'll do first and foremost is I'm going to come back here. All these nicely packaged cords. So our fans will hook into this here, which will be super handy. So I'll take that around. And now I'm going to flip this over here. And so we can take our fans, we can plug them in. One, and we'll neatly cable organize at a later date. For now, we're putting the fans in, and then this is for our final one that plugs into here. Remember when we tested it, we had that fan plug there? That will plug into there, okay? So that'll be good there. Like I said, we'll get all this neatly organized soon thereafter. Go. Go. Happens to Betsy. So now what we want to do is we want to assess where exactly all these plug in and then run them according to their most direct location, okay? So as you see here, some of these will plug in down here and some will plug up in on the side. So this one actually plugs right up in on the side here. we gotta make sure that notch lines up. That plugs right into there. That looks good. Then we have our HD audio, which goes right here. So we want to pull this one over here.
Which one's going there?
This guy right here. There's that. Okay. Now we have our USB, which goes right here. So we'll drop this one down to right there. And that way all these cables are nice and neatly organized. And then what is this? Ah, yes, this little rascal goes right here. So we're gonna pull this one right up here and just turn it. There we go. All right, so that looks all good. So you see we have a lot more room to work around when we don't have this plugged in, the GPU in, and so we basically have all of our plugs ready to go. And I'm gonna triple check to make sure there's not anything else. So let's get our thermal paste put on, our GPU put in, and then we'll do the power supply and we'll wire everything up. So once again, we're gonna do a P size on the CPU. Okay, that was supposed to be a P size, but it got a little carried away. All right, looks good. This stuff lasts forever. I've had this tube for my past like 4 builds. It's crazy how long this stuff lasts. All right, and then I want to check where my ports are coming out. That's perfect. The ports are going to come out right there. There's some nice lead room there, so that'll float right over top of the GPU, and this will sit all nicely right in here. So let's do this. I'm going to lay this down flat because that's going to make it much easier to mount the heatsink. So let's do that real quick. All right, like so. And then I'm going to have, so if I do it like that, yeah, that'll work really well. All right, looks good. Now I want to grab these, put them on there. Just some finger tension. I'm going to hold the middle of the heatsink down. That way it doesn't rock and mess up the thermal paste or just throw off how it's laying flat into the CPU. Remember, we want to twist these down. We don't want to over tighten them. We just want them to be good and snug. Now we want to hook in our cords, which are over here with the power supply. For right now, I'm going to unhook it from the SATA because we'll run that back into the box at a later point. So this is our main connector, and that's going to go into the bottom of the heatsink, like so. So just like we did when we installed it outside of the box. There's that. All right, looks good. Okay, so then this will plug into our heat pump right here. We did earlier. Looks good. All right, now we want to bring in the power supply, okay? So you always want the fan facing down. That way it's pulling air from outside of the case. You don't want it pulling air from inside of the case because that will create more heat, which then turns your logo upside down. Design flaw, in my opinion, but it's all good. So we slide this guy in here, like so, and then we're gonna mount the screws right there. Here are hex screws. These are the ones for our power supply. Okay. Got 4 of those. Okay. Some hefty screws. All right, so then we go, can you see that? So we got one down there. Put that one in. All right, we're in. All right, now we're gonna hook in our power. So we're going to drop our CPU plug up here. This is the most difficult port to hook in the entire build. So we'll see how this goes. So basically we want this clip to be up top there. So we're going to come in pretty far, and then we're going to reverse it. I think we almost got it. Good, there it is. See that port goes up top there, that's for the CPU. Next, we'll bring in the motherboard, which is this massive plug, which will go right here. And of course, we're gonna do some nice cable management later. But for now, we just want to get this bad boy put together. Now we have a SATA power back here we need to plug in. So this bad boy gets plugged into our SATA power right here. There we go. And then I want to plug our USB into our pump, which is on the front again. Right down there. All right, now we're going to hook our other SATA back in the back here. So we get another one here, just pop that right on there. Now we need to put our GPU in so we can hook up our power to our GPU. We're going to push all these cables up and out of the way. And what's going to be nice about the GPU is it's actually going to give us the opportunity to really have a nice trough to organize our cables, because right now they're just kind of flung everywhere. So I'm going to put my GPU into position, and that'll really give us a nice, neat organization of our cables. Okay, so first and foremost, though, we need to get the back plate off here. We need to align the back plate with the ports. So I need to do a test run of my GPU to see where exactly it's planning on fitting itself. And it looks like it's going to be, these two. So once we get these out, we can then slide the GPU into place right here. So I'm going to go ahead and set the GPU down the same way we put it in before. Slide these cords out of the way. And we're going to want to set that right there. Make sure that's sliding into place, which it is, and then drop it in. So now the GPU is officially in place. We can secure these screws back down on top of here, like so. All right, so we got that. Now we're going to take the PCIe and we're going to drop it right into the port up top there, like so. All right, now that one's in. So what are you supposed to do with these NZXT? Just throw them away? Okay, so I figured out what these two are for. This is for a RGB module, so for like lighting. And this is an alternative power source. So we don't need these because we're hooked into SATA power. But one mistake I did make earlier, and I will show you, is down here, I had this F panel plugged in over here. And so that was incorrect. The F panel actually is what controls the on-off switch up top. And so we're going to plug that in to our power on and off, which normally looks something like this. But they've done us a really big favor and given us a very easy to manage power off switch reset button. So we're all plugged into the power, and we're going to see if we can get this thing to turn on. And we're turned on. Now let's see, by plugging this in to the screen, if we can get a post. And we have a post. Great work. That is a good sight. So you've officially built an NZXT i9 GTX 1660 Ti with some Dominator Corsair and an NZXT AIO cooler. And also the Corsair 750 power supply. Again, if you want to build one just like this, links are in the description below. If you want to watch the full series about now how to boot up this and install Windows, I have another video. I'll link that as well. So you got everything you need to build your own custom PC. I'm Benji Kaiser. Keep editing, keep designing, keep creating, and I'll see you in the next episode.